We are now live. Chief, did you want to say a few words before we start?
Oh, yes, no, sir. I'm just moral support, so, question.
Okay, I'm gonna try doing test here with Dylan. Devin, are we working? Hello, Devin.
How are you gonna hear back?
What's that?
How are you gonna hear back?
He's going to text me
Uh,
telepathically. He said it takes a few minutes. Oh, Mike. Brian Lanoy will not be here. CMP has blocked his house because Brian wants power at his house. Pretty damn selfish that he would. I don't know. He just said, power line issue at my house and CMP has blocked my driveway. Unfortunately, I will not be able to make it to the meeting tonight.
Oh, man. Well, that's a bummer.
Yeah, Sam will be here, the Jess will.
Okay. So I don't have to remember which one's which.
Jess is one coming.
Yes. So all I need to remember is Jess. I always say Jess anyway, no matter which one comes.
Yeah, you're golden.
Sound is working, but I am way early. Well, thank you, Devin.
Hey, how are you?
Hello, Alan. Brian can't come. He's being blocked in by CMP, so he will not be here. Too bad, I was looking for getting his name right tonight. Brian Lenoir.
Lenoy.
Lenoir.
Oh, it's not Lenoy.
Unlike Mark
Oh,
Durr.
my goodness.
Mine's easy.
Lenoir. Lenoir. Yeah, makes sense. I've been sitting confused.
Yeah, he said he wasn't coming again until I get, so it's not just conservation people who I can't get their name right. I mean, he's been on well over a year, right? What's that? Yeah, and unfortunately, I remember it, but, I mean, I've been. You've been on board for a year, and I've been saying it, never corrected, never said, hey, John, get my name right. I'm gonna put that back. Mark all the things. I would listen to you anyway.
I'm on the top side of the dirt, so that's always good.
You wake up on the right side of the dirt, it's all good. Is that the same stuff? Yeah, we have. For everybody's edification, I watched the select board meeting last night. And the last very long period of the select board meeting was a class they had with the town attorney. And it was actually very interesting. Well, yeah, she was giving them a class on everything select board. FOIA, when you can use pepper spray in a meeting,
When is that?
I was making that up, but anyway.
That's for the planning board.
So the entire time I was sitting there saying, well, okay, it's been 30 minutes, there's $200. Another 30 minutes, so, I bet it's $400 there.
Oh,
But-
150 now.
Yeah, so, anyway.
What did they want clarification?
I think it was just kind of like, train us, I mean, it was stuff,
when you can go into executive session, what you can discuss in executive session. I learned so much I've forgotten in the last 3 hours.
What emails?
Email, yeah, they talk about FOIA and how emails are, use the town thing, because if you don't, you open up your entire life. If you put something on Facebook related to the town, everybody gets to see your face, if they file a FOIA request, they get to see it. They covered,
We can use it as like we're doing now, disseminating info, but not really having a conversation.
yes,
Right.
and she didn't really say you couldn't, you could, don't have a conversation about, what do you think about,
Right.
Jones development or anything like that. It's like, pretty much, the meeting's at 6, please be there. George sent out this, please be there. So, that kind of stuff that they talked about, it was interesting. Well, that was a big chunk of it, which is,
Sure.
you could say that you're not representing a select board, but people will assume you are. They will know you're a select board person, so, maybe you keep it legally that way.
Yeah, I saw last night, that was 3 hours also.
Yeah, although I gotta admit,
I
Joe
watched it.
said, well, what do you do
She
when
went for 2
the
hours.
chairman of the planning board is belligerent and won't do what,
I don't think so.
No, but you're just saying.
There was an hour and a half of, let's talk about how bad the planning board is. I started taking it personal.
Yeah.
All right.
These
These
are
are
all
all
hypotheticals.
Get off on different-
They didn't say, hey, what do you do if the,
They
Cemetery.
were all
And he heard all
hypotheticals,
of it.
and I said it's better to ask these questions when there's no concern, when there's actually a concern, so.
but you never once brought up like the cemetery. Never once did you.
I brought up Conservation Commission,
You did, but that was,
and we brought up Public Works,
they did, but how wonderful they
and
were.
codes, we brought up codes.
How wonderful they all were. So, I'm not gonna lose sleep, but, no, it was actually very good. So, if I thought it was a very good meeting.
Yeah, it was just-
Her,
It's a very different,
training was really, I thought.
Is that our new attorney?
yeah, and it's a very different relationship with our new attorney and our prior attorney. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot more engagement, like rapid response for requests and,
Well, I'm sure she's getting lots of that kind of training, but she was well prepared,
yeah,
gave good answers and, words.
yeah, and their firm's pretty stacked with municipal experience, so. How you
Okay, well, we've got Roberta and Samantha are here, so we're just waiting for Jess.
Yes.
The other one.
Here's Joe.
Jess.
Time.
The other Jess?
We have several on the performance. John, they always said that the bad students sit in the back of the class, so I don't know what's going on over here.
Well, my mother used to make us go to, on Christmas Eve, we would have to go to church an hour and a half early. So we'd sit in the very back of the balcony.
Oh.
I mean, we were sitting all by ourselves, up there.
First in, last out.
It was, that's exactly what it was. She didn't mind being last out, but she didn't.
So everyone sees you when they come in, so they know you're there, but you can
If
see
you get
you're
credit,
early.
that's just credit.
Yeah, so it's good. That's good.
I just took the nap in the truck. Someone pulled up the part next to me and woke me up, and I was alone. It was fucking crazy scary. Work town. And, I got to go back to my country. I didn't spend much time with him. Close. Close to that level.
Yeah.
We'll Look
So
at
what
where
you
we're
can
right now.
say,
I feel like you did a lot.
Yeah, chief is pointing out some points on this Saturday.
Did you folks sign in and get the, if you would please, and get the handout?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're having fun. They have hundreds of maps.
It is, they've set records for
Call everybody. Trying to see it. The chief's truck down there. Couple of Indian pumps. Yeah, maybe some of the free water.
Just throw them like grenades.
Scarce and hunting season. Calling sick and stuff like that. So, I mean, my problem is, it's been good, I've been busy, the whole problem is. Season I try to limit myself. I feel like I'm falling behind. Oh, yeah, 'cause I usually work from 4 to 5. You know,
They did a good job.
so. I feel like I'm busy but good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had great, she came out.
I'm pretty good.
Oh, you can go Chief said something like that.
Thanks, Joe, appreciate it. You get to sign, yeah. I appreciate that. Warmer states. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I believe it is 6:30. And so everybody turn on your microphones there. So we want to get started because we've got a lot to cover tonight and want to make sure that we get through it. So the first thing I'll start with is a check on the quorum. We have 5 members, 4 are present, 1 is presently blocked in his driveway by CMP restoring his power. So he may or may not catch up to us later today, but we do have a quorum. So if you will stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. So the purpose for tonight's meeting, we'll get started with that first. So there's 2 items on tonight's agenda. One is a change to the resource protection article based upon some new data, and then the other one is for a moratorium on battery storage. So we'll kind of get into that, but kind of want to tell you where we are in this process. So we met with the select board, all the committee chairs met with the select board last spring, and they handed out a couple of tasks for the committees and boards to work on over the summer and the fall. So the 2 that the plan that came in the general direction of the planning board, one was take a look at resource protection, review that, and then the other one was battery energy storage. And we'll talk about each one individually. So throughout the summer, the resource protection, that was a joint Conservation Commission and Planning Board effort. So there were 3 members from each committee
that were on that. And so early fall, we spent the summer talking about and you'll see the results on the resource protection as we go through this. Refined our proposal to go forward, and tonight is not the culmination because we're a long ways from the end, but tonight is an opportunity for us to show you, talk to you, inform you about what the results were, what we've done on that, and then the other one is battery energy storage, which George, Mr. Tavares, the town planner, will go into greater detail on what that is. And that's a little bit different, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. So, talked about the process on resource protection and that. So tonight is about an introduction of the two items to the town. And so either those of you who are here or those of you who are watching on television, what are we doing? And the way we're going to do this is I'm doing the intro as we speak. The town planner, Mr. Thabarge, will give information on a little more details about the two items one at a time. We'll then take public comments and questions, and then we'll wrap each one up separately. So we'll do resource protection first, followed by battery energy storage. So the process from this point is for resource protection, we'll take your comments tonight. We'll take a look at those at our December 10th meeting. December 4th is the next planning board meeting. Make changes that may or may not, that may be appropriate. And then the planning board sends it to the select board. The select board will take our recommendation for the changes. They will tweak them and add to them, change them, decide not to put them on the town warrant at all. They will send it back to after they've made their changes, send it back to the planning board. Planning board will have a formal public hearing, which is different tonight, is informational, sometime in March, 30 days, no more than 30 days before, no less than 7 days before the town meeting, which I think is the 5th of April, but the first Saturday in April. The town will vote, as a legislative body, they will vote to approve or not the resource protection changes. So that's kind of where that process is. So having said that, I think I said we looked at resource protection to see what changes may have occurred since it was last looked at. And I'll ask Mr. Thabarge, who's the town planner, to give us some detail or some information on that. I do want to say that tonight is not about, for resource protection, it's not about individual properties. So if you're here to talk about, I live at 636 Stackpole, we're not going to do that this evening. We're talking about the process, and we're talking about, in general, how we came up with ideas or proposals. But Mr. Thabarge, the town planner, whether he likes it or not, is very happy to meet with you individually to talk about your individual parcel, show it to you on the GIS, and explain to you why it may still be in resource protection, or why we cut this piece of resource protection out so that you could add on to your home. So with that, Mr. Thabarge, is there anything I need to cover that you haven't? So I'll turn it over to George Thabarge, our town planner.
Thank you, John. I will help everyone just understand what the proposed changes are. And so we start out with the reminder that in 2023, the zoning map was updated based on comprehensive plan recommendations and natural resources data that have been provided by the state. Part of this process for comprehensive planning, state provides natural resources data across all towns in Maine, and so the town uses that as a basis for making decisions on natural resource conservation and protection. During that participation process, similar to what we're doing tonight, there was considerable public input that was questioning the accuracy of the state data, and there was also significant concerns expressed about the impacts of that new resource protection zoning on the expansion of existing structures. So after a review of Durham's data based on public inquiries at the state level, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife confirmed that their co-occurrence map, which was very generalized in the way that it had been applied, was inaccurate. And so they did a customized analysis of Durham to try to give us a much more accurate picture. So the proposed zoning map revisions will remove areas that were previously placed in RP based on this rating system that IF&W uses, beginning with habitat program of 6+, and this is an overlapping of deer yard, unbroken forested, if there's wildlife, special wildlife habitat, conserved lands, all of those things go into a qualitative assessment of how important this is for a community to work on protection. So that has been updated, as I said, and we've also, working with the Conservation Commission members and Planning Board members on that working group that John mentioned, took a deep dive look at the impacts of resource protection on existing structures and the difficulties imposed if they have to go to a board, either a planning board or a Board of Appeals review to do expansions of those structures. So the committee took a look at that as well. So where they came out after the review of all this research was this is what we were using in the 2018 update. These were the areas of Durham identified by the Beginning with Habitat program as being of a higher significance in terms of co-occurrence of natural resources. And that's about 1,500 acres total of land. And based on the comprehensive plan, that land in 2023 was put into the Resource Protection District. So as I said, actually just came out this year, they did a customized analysis. So if you compare the green area on this map with these maps, which show all of the different resource values, you can see on the left side those dark green areas that show up in composite on this map. And when they did the 2024 update customized, you can see that pretty much all of that really dark green, which is the higher rating values for Durham, pretty much dropped off. And so that led to a dramatically different picture in terms of those higher value co-occurrence natural resource areas. So part of the proposal that the Planning Board and Conservation Commission Working Group was recommending is to revise the zoning map to remove about 1,500 acres depicted on this map as orange. Those are those dark green areas. Now, if there are other Durham classifications, 100-year floodplain, 10-acre plus forested wetlands, the 100-foot stream buffer, the waterfowl wading bird habitats, those will still be resource protection. So the only parts that will be removed are those portions that are only resource protection because of that Beginning with Habitat 6+ co-occurrence of natural resources. So those are the only areas that will be pulled out of resource protection. And then the second part of this proposal is to look at existing buildings within the resource protection, and those spots are depicted by these circles on the map. You can see that purple ones are buildings, of which there were about 18. There were 18 buildings within those circles that were in resource protection based on that co-occurrence of natural resources. If the resource protection is removed from those areas, those buildings will now come out of resource protection, and those buildings can be expanded without any board reviews, subject to whatever the building codes are. But there are another 34 properties and buildings that will still be in resource protection, and so those buildings, giving relief to those property owners, is the second part of this proposal. So after a lot of discussion about how to give that relief and how to measure it and how to apply it, where the working group came out was 4 different situations. Generally, the intent was to provide a 100-foot buffer for development around those existing structures. These are down along, in the floodplain along the Androscoggin River, that's Snow Road. So basically create a 100-foot development buffer, so development expansion of these buildings could occur within these development buffers with no requirement to go either to the planning board or the Board of Appeals. Now any construction in here would still be subject to floodplain regulations in terms of floodproofing. So any federal or state regulations impacting the development in this floodplain would still be applied, but it would not be Durham resource protection. And then a similar treatment was applied to all existing buildings that were restricted from expansion by resource protection on the basis of being in a 10-acre area identified as 10-acre plus or larger forested wetlands. So you can see there's a couple of homes here. These are the yellow depictions and one over here. And so creating a 100-foot buffer around those will again enable those property owners to apply for building permits to expand their homes or businesses without having to go before any board. When the commission and planning board working group looked at stream buffers, they saw a need to do a differential treatment on that. So this building, I think this is Auburn Pownell Road, that building, because the corner of it is within the 100-foot stream buffer, that is a non-conforming structure, and any expansion of that building would have to go either to the Board of Appeals or the Planning Board. So the intent here is to remove the building from the resource protection so that expansions could occur without board approval, provided that if they're expanding their building, it can go no closer to the protected resource, which is in this case a stream. And then finally, the same treatment would be given, and there are only a couple of spots in town where you have an existing building. This is off the way up in the end of Snow Road, where you have a building that is currently in a buffer of a waterfowl wading bird habitat area identified by the state, but that building again could not be expanded without going to the boards. We did a kind of a customized change to the map that pulled the building out of resource protection and allows expansion on 3 sides as long as that construction goes no further toward the protected resource. So the proposal that will be put before the select board, the recommendation from the working group after considering the public input, is currently to remove areas that had previously been identified as 6+ co-occurrence. And again, those are those areas represented in orange. And then also to remove all buildings from the Resource Protection District following those guidelines, those 4 different guidelines that I gave you. Those are really hard to see at this scale, but you can actually see those ones up near Snow Road. There's little circles, those 100-foot buffer development buffers around those. So that is the proposal.
Okay. So I think the next step is to take public comment on this. So as I said earlier, it's not your specific piece of property. That Mr. Thabarge would be more than happy to meet with you after this. But we are interested in your comments. Your comments will be taken into consideration, or questions. We'll try to answer the questions this evening. We've got the Conservation Commission folks with us, Mr. Thabarge, the members of the Planning Board. So we'll try to answer any questions that you've got. So we'll go ahead and do that. When you come up to the microphone, a couple of things. Please raise your hand so that I recognize you. This is not going to be a conversation. So this is, if you've got questions or comments, come on up, give them. We'll try to answer them, but it's too hard to control, or it takes too much time if we try to answer questions, shout questions from the back. Also, if you come to the mic, we know we captured your question, and if we can't answer it this evening, we'll be able to get back to you at a different time. So try to hold your questions, comments to 3 minutes plus or minus. If we have some time after that, we'll do a second round. So
please come up prepared with your questions, comments, and we'll go ahead and get this piece started. Who would like to be first? Please come on up, sir. Name and address, please.
Bruce Rowe, I live in 1641 Royalsboro Road.
Sir, if you would, speak in the microphone so we can capture it.
Oh, no, I'd rather not.
If you don't mind, sir. As a special favor.
Yes, sir. I'm Bruce Rowe. I live at 1641 Royalsboro Road, and I just had a question. From what I've heard here so far, we live down, I guess we call it the southeast part of the town, off from 136. And apparently this meeting has nothing to do with that area at this point.
If you're not on the map, I think that would be true. It's, as I said, it's hard to talk to individual
Right.
properties, and I would defer you to Mr. Tavares. But if you don't see your property on the map, either here or on the
Well, hell, I
GIS.
can look at the map and I don't know where I'm at now. I mean, looking right now at 136 and into Freeport, by the looks of that map, am I correct in saying I would be considered in the southwest part of the town and not on that map at this point?
Well, that's the entire town boundary right there.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess what I would, as John indicated, probably the best way for us to answer your question is to have you get in touch with me by the email on the town's website, and I can prepare a map of your particular property and show you what, if any, impact it would have.
Sounds good.
All right.
Do that. Thank you for your time. I'm
You're
leaving.
More than welcome, thank you. Thank you
Make
for
sure your
speaking into the
email
microphone.
or how to get in touch with you is on the sign-in sheet.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I think, ma'am, come on up.
I'm Linda Callenbach. I have property on Runaround Pond Road.
Okay?
And it's really more of a comment, not so much a question. But when whoever crafts the language and the question that'll be voted upon, it would seem to me a good idea to explain a little bit. You know, this just says remove areas, but it doesn't say because it was based on, you know, maybe some inaccuracies and that sort of stuff. It seems to me that ought to be clear to the voters that this is to correct something.
Okay.
If I'm being clear, you know.
You are being clear.
Okay.
And we will try to make it clear.
I hope so. Well, you know, if people come in and say, oh, why, you know? It doesn't really seem like it would be a bad thing to make it crystal clear.
And we will probably do a presentation at the town meeting and take the same kinds of questions and comments. But if you have, I can't emphasize enough, if you have a question about your specific property, the best way to get it answered is to have Mr. Tavares show it to you on the GIS system.
Yeah, no, it's not about, it's just in general, you know.
I appreciate that, thank you. Anyone else? Sir?
Derek Lovich, 36 Snow Road. Always great to see your property as the example. Actually, a more general question. Was the December flood considered a 100-year flood? It was the second highest recording on the Androscoggin.
I don't know the answer to that. Does anybody know the answer to that?
I think it was far in excess of the 100-year flood.
That was my impression. Therefore, my question is, why is the floodplain mapped as it is, considering it's quite incongruent with the actual results of a 100-year flood? And therefore, how did the floodplain map be made by FEMA, state, et cetera, because they don't match?
If I may take a shot at that, and anybody else is welcome to join into it. The 100-year floodplain map is, a 1% chance of it occurring in 100 years. So you can have floods that are greater than that. But the 100-year floodplain is FEMA has just said, it's a standard they use or a line they draw on the map to say, these are the areas we're concerned about, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
And I will also say that Mr. Tavares and I attended a meeting, I don't know where they are in the process, but FEMA is looking at the lower Androscoggin to include Durham to see if they're gonna remap
the Androscoggin. So it may change 5-10 years from now. That's a very long process.
Yeah, I understand. It's hard for me to sort of wrap around whether I agree or disagree with the mapping when I sort of have inherent question about, I mean, if you look at the floodplain mapping for the edge of call it the north central corridor there, that is probably, I mean, 2 to 4 times the actual flooding that occurred in December. And although my property has no chance of subdividing while I'm alive, nor do I want to ever expand the house we just built, I worry about my neighbors a bit and also the potential for that area. It also makes me just generally concerned about the process of the mapping because it just doesn't make sense. The original flood maps before this process began almost perfectly aligned with the flooding that occurred in the December flood. So the change that has significantly increased, and I guess it leads me to question the whole thing, even though generally I'm supportive of it and would like to state that things like the 100-foot buffer for pre-existing buildings is something I commend and makes sense because a building is no longer habitat. And if buildings were built like ours was with flooding in mind, we'd have no concerns about it. My biggest question comes things that are beyond the scope of the meeting today, stuff like flood insurance, which we have, but how much more when basically 3/4 of our property is considered a floodplain, which I'd argue is just not conceivable.
I would defer your questions about, I mean, the floodplain is drawn up by FEMA, and they do all kinds of fancy, flyover. It's much more precise as they're going forward. Floodplain, I think FEMA or your insurance people are the right guys to talk to about that, your flood insurance.
Sure, that's fair, and I don't want to get specific about properties, but it does, like I said, make me question sort of a lot more than just my property, because some of it just doesn't make sense to someone who would self-define as a conservationist who wants to protect resources. So I'm a little concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for hearing me out.
Next, anybody else? Sir?
Yeah, I'm John Benedict. I live on Runaround Pond Road. And first of all, it's more of a comment. I'm wondering, on previous meetings when you were talking about this meeting, you said you were going to be sending out postcards to the affected landowners, and I never received a postcard about this meeting. And I know my neighbors haven't either.
Wait 1 second. I believe we sent them out over a week ago.
Yeah, we sent out 120 based on looking at the maps and identifying the properties, so.
I don't want to throw the U.S. Post Office under the bus, but they were mailed.
Oh, well,
Because
I
I-
never
I-
got one.
and I'm sorry
I
that
know
you-
some of my neighbors didn't get them either. Beside that, to follow up on Linda's question about, I know why the Runaround Pond area land is being taken out of resource protection because of the inaccurate facts of the landing turtle. But some of the other areas that are in orange now that are being taken out, I was wondering what the change was there. Why that's no longer 6+ if it wasn't within the landing turtle circle.
I will pass that to either Mrs. Marge or Conservation Commission. Anybody want to take a shot at, other than the fact it's no longer on the state map after they've reviewed them, so, that's our basis, but is there anybody?
Well, I was like any specific reason? I mean, I know there's values, different resources have different values, and when a resource goes away, it takes away from the 6th point. But those areas that aren't in that, where the landing turtle was supposedly living, I was just wondering why is it different now than it was?
I think Mr. Roy would like to answer that, and Joe, if you would come up and do the introduction.
Joe Roy, we're on Pink and Brook Road. To answer your question, the map that was drawn using, and this is just the facts and figures here. The map that was drawn, that was utilized, is from 2018 when the town went through the comprehensive planning process. And one of the criteria there was looking at undeveloped habitat blocks, meaning areas that are not having any sort of development. They could be fields, they could be forests, but if there was houses, they were buffered and called undeveloped. And since 2018, some of those areas have had additional houses developed, had roads put in, driveways and things of that nature. And so those undeveloped habitat blocks score large amounts of points if they are 1,200 acres or more. And so there are some areas in town where those 1,200 acre blocks are now smaller due to additional development that's taken place since 2018. And so when the map was redrawn in 2024, those areas no longer met that 1,200 acre undeveloped habitat block criteria. They might have dropped down to 1,100 acres or 1,150. And that 1,200 acre threshold is where the value assigned to that block drops a lot. So if something's over 1,200 acres, it scores quite a few points. If it's under 1,200 acres, it scores less. So that's one of the reasons that some of these were pulled out of there. Others are because the floodplain was redrawn based off of the most recent FEMA 100-year floodplain map. And now when that was put into the co-occurrence model, it no longer applies in some areas. So if you look at some of the stream features we have here, those red areas had previously been considered part of the floodplain, but due to increases in accuracy of mapping, they said it's unlikely that this floodplain would be a 100-year floodplain. We need to tighten it up a little bit. So that's some of the reasons why that I can think of in particular. So.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. The other question I have is, do you foresee any opposition to this being approved at the, you know?
Every time I say something's easy, we spend 3 hours talking about it, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's gonna
any negative feedback about it, or?
What I would say is our intent was, our goal was to help out people who either shouldn't be there because they're no longer in a resource protected area, or those, like the previous gentleman who are there, to give them some opportunity to do something with their property. So that's certainly our goal. But if, you know, I don't know.
Well, I think probably everybody that's affected by that is gonna approve it or in favor of it, but I just don't know if there's any, would be any opposition to it. And that's where his question.
I haven't heard much.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Anyone else? Going. Anybody else in the back, front, middle, want to ask a question? Okay, we do.
Howard Hager,
Mr.
2921
Hager,
Pond
good to
Road.
see you again.
Good to see you. I just wanted to double down on the largest block of red area that's potentially to be taken out of resource protection because the 6+ designation is gone. And that circle, as you can see at the remnants of a circle, are directly related to the Blandings turtle being spotted in the center of that circle on the Chesley Hill Road. So that's a good reason to take that out of resource protection, because it's been debunked clearly by all the powers that be. So, and it is the largest block of land. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Going. So, I will turn to anything from the planning board or the conservation commission that you would like to add to this. We have 3 members of the conservation commission, all of whom work very hard and very well, I think, as a team. So, kudos to them.
I do want to, I guess, one thing, to clarify that the data that we have on here, the floodplain is from FEMA. So that is, the latest accurate data. So I do want to clarify that.
Thank you. Anything else at all? Okay, so I will, again, this is public informational. So the next step is we'll take the comments that we've heard this evening. In our December meeting, we, the planning board, will decide what we want to send forward to the
select board, and then they will act on that, as I said, act on it, put together the warrant, tweak the recommendation if they so desire, and you will, there will be a public hearing which has little bit different rules in terms of public notice and all that other stuff, sometime in March, and then be there for the final vote, the town meeting in 5th of April, I think it is, so. And I apologize that it didn't get out in terms of, I do know the postcards were mailed, and I'm not throwing the US Post Office under the bus, but I am. I'm sorry about, I mean, I go 4 or 5 days without getting mail, so I don't know what to say. But what I really wanted to say was, this is being taped, or whatever the right term is, digitally recorded. Please pass it on to your neighbors who may not have gotten the word or could not be here this evening to take a look at it. If they have individual questions, Mr. Thabarge, or even just in general, please reach out to us, and we will reconvene the planning board, to discuss this on, I think it's the 4th or 5th, or the first Wednesday of December.
Yeah, the fourth.
So I think I've covered, any other comments? I've covered resource protection for the evening. Thank you for coming. The next topic will be battery energy storage systems.
Thank you for recording this video.
Yes.
YouTube. Okay.
Yeah, the town has a YouTube channel. And I apologize for looking at my phone when somebody was talking, but I wanted to check to make sure that it was actually working this time. And I am assured that it was working, so it should be recorded. So if you're not staying for battery energy storage, we'll let you slide out, and then we'll move on to the moratorium for battery energy storage. Folks, if I could just ask you to keep moving. Okay, so our next topic is battery energy storage. And I want to start by, we're going to do this pretty much the same process, but this one's a little bit different in terms of the next steps. So we are here this evening to talk only about the moratorium, and we'll explain why we think we need a moratorium. So the discussion tonight won't be about, I don't like them, can I put one in my yard? Where do you think it's going? We don't have a lot of answers to those right now, so we're not going to conjecture or whatever. But it is, we felt as the planning board, and I think the select board felt the same way, that the tools that we have in the ordinance now aren't as strong, for lack of a better term, that they should be to handle this, and George will explain some of the particular issues to battery storage. And so the moratorium will give us time to develop the right tools, talk to all the right people. We've gotten help from Chief and some others. We had been working on it in the summer, and probably about August, September, as a planning board, we just sat down and said, this is probably too complicated to get done in time to do it justice at the town meeting. So we're asking for a moratorium, and the reason, and so the purpose for this is to provide you information. There's a special town meeting next Tuesday, the 19th, at 6:30 at the Eureka Center. 6:45 at the Eureka. You can be there at 6:30, get a better seat, but the meeting's going to start at 6:45. So that will be a special town meeting, but kind of the same rules. We'll have a moderator. It'll be presented. There'll be an opportunity to speak pro or con for the moratorium. I won't emphasize that, for just the moratorium. So tonight we're not going to talk about the size, the standards, whether you want them or don't want them, don't know where it's going, and so on and so on. All of that will come during the moratorium. That'll give us a time to develop good standards and good rules for it. Make sense? Super. Mr. Thabarge will talk about
battery energy storage systems and the moratorium.
Okay, so we'll start out just by explaining what it is we're talking about. This graphic up here on the left is actually a plan that was approved by the Gorham Planning Board. This is on, I think, Route 25. It's next to a CMP pole line in an industrial park, and it's 5 acres of battery storage that connects into the grid directly on the power line there. So each one of these units is about like this, and so those are each capable, I think, of about 1 megawatt of energy storage, and so that's a 5-acre site. And as I said, that was approved by the planning board in Gorham, and like Durham, they had no standards for this other than their site plan review standards. And Durham standards, like, at least in Gorham, they have some industrial areas, so they have a little bit more. But generally, site plan review is not designed at all to deal with the issues associated with this type of development. And it's happening all across Maine, all across the country, and there have been some real issues with some of these facilities. So how we got here is, as I said, Gorham recently approved a utility scale project next to a CMP substation, and Durham has actually received inquiries about building an even bigger particular system here in town. The town attorney has advised that that type of development currently, because it's related to the electrical grid, meets the definition of an essential services and is a permitted use in the all throughout the rural residential and agricultural district, which means the only regulations that the planning board can apply, not even conditional use, can only apply the site plan review standards, which, as I said, are really designed for small office park type development, shopping centers, those sorts of things. So it doesn't begin to address the issues of battery energy storage systems. And based on some of the research we've done over the last year, and this actually came up when we were looking at developing standards for solar energy systems, the solar farms, but we just didn't really have the time or the experience to really get into this issue in the last round of town meeting process. But what we have learned since then, this was one of the couple of issues that John mentioned that the select board had directed the planning board to work on, is that in other states where this has been much more prolific up to this point, there have been significant fire safety, noise, and environmental concerns. And again, Durham's regulations right now don't even begin to address those things. So the planning board had proposed a 6-month moratorium for the upcoming town meeting, but based on input from the town attorney, the select board has really advised that to prevent any applications from being filed before the April 25th town, or April 2025 town meeting, the town should consider doing a special town meeting with a moratorium. So that's basically the overview. I do have some slides that just kind of get into explaining a little bit more about those, but I think again at this point, the purpose is really to deal with should the town do a moratorium on this or not, and then get into the details.
So I'd just like to emphasize, so that George mentions a 6-month moratorium, the moratorium language will also, if it passes, will also grant the select board the ability to extend it for another 6 months. So if we can't get to a good solution in 6 months, we will hopefully get to it in a year. But the moratorium will expire a year from, if it passes next week, a year from November. I get 360 days, actually. I think it's 180 and 180. So that's part of the moratorium. The other one is that it does not, so that it does not include, so if you've got the solar batteries that you might have with your home solar, so under 20 kilohertz, I think, are exempt.
Kilowatts.
Kilowatts, yeah, thank you. I should have started with this, that I failed electrical engineering in the final exam, so I trust other people to get their my kilowatts and megawatts and gigawatts correct. But anyway, 20 kilowatts of energy, which we believe is more than enough if you've got a residential solar system. We don't want to deny you the use of a battery or your Tesla or whatever you may want to do. So
At this point, we'll turn it over to public comments with the same conditions that we're talking strictly about the moratorium. And the election is next Tuesday at 6:45 at the Eureka Center. Sir, if you would.
Mike Friendly, Run Around Pond Road. My only concern is that I think that 20 kilowatts might not be generous enough. It's fine if you're only backing up lighting and your fridge and maybe your water, but there are people that want several batteries to back up heating and cooling, and I would recommend 40 kilowatts because of that. I mean, I think that will, to my understanding, that will cover 95% of situations. It's a little detail, but it might avoid some angst down the road.
Thank you. I am concerned that where we are in the process, I don't know if we can make because this has been posted as the item, so I'm looking for somebody, again, smarter than me to see if we can change it before next Tuesday.
Well, I mean, we would only be changing the documentation going out to the meeting on Tuesday, right?
Yeah, but it has to be posted 7 days in advance.
Oh, right, and we're voting on it.
Yeah, we're voting on
Yeah.
it, so we're under that 7 days.
The other question I would have is that, and I do actually have, I think, some graphics on that. That's pretty much a Tesla, and I think that's 20.
13 and a half.
Yeah, it says that most residential backup systems would fall below the 20 kilowatt hour, so I'm wondering if you'd be able to have 2 of those units in your house
No, you wouldn't,
under this.
under this.
That says 20, right?
Those are 13, but if
Right.
you had 2, they'd be 26, and you'd exceed the limit.
Right.
I guess that would require a legal interpretation.
And we probably need to ask that if we can modify I'm just thinking out loud, folks, I think we need to dig into it. Thank you for the information.
Yeah, maybe.
But we probably need to dig into it with the attorney to see if there is the power to change it, the legal okay to change it, on the floor or before the floor, or whatever it may be. But we're now inside the 7-day notice.
Minor note on that, but that one's an interior one. We have an exterior one that'd be bigger and would have that restriction.
The intent is to exempt the residential.
Yes, we just probably, I think we don't know the answer. I mean, if it's something other than 20, do we have the power to change it before next Tuesday? I don't know the answer to that. I did better in law in college, but I'm not an attorney, so.
So I guess my concern with that is if it was gonna be, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Cody Mayhew, 1031 Hall. My concern with that is if it was gonna be a fair vote and there was a small detail in there that was gonna make it so that it would get voted down for that, then I guess it wouldn't be a fair vote, so to speak, then.
I hear what you're saying, but we're gonna just have to sort it out if we could. I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ma'am? I've already forgotten your name, so if you'd please.
Run around. Where? You say they don't know where they're gonna do this? Where do they wanna put this?
Yeah, we're not gonna discuss, that's not part of this evening's
It's
discussion.
not, okay, it's just whether we're gonna do the moratorium or not.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I had some other question, and one would be, I guess, if they are permitted to do this, does it in any way improve our tax base?
Same thing, we're gonna
Same thing,
postpone,
I'm not allowed to ask
we're-
questions.
not on, tonight is solely about the moratorium.
Just about the moratorium, okay, good idea.
So I will say that if we get into the standards or whatever, we'll go through the same process for any changes to, additions, changes to the ordinance.
Okay, it's
So-
just like, huh, what is that? So, okay, thank you.
Good questions, hold on to them.
Okay.
Ma'am?
Hi, Roberta Brzezinski, Quaker Ridge Road. My question is, if the moratorium is going to run out ultimately a year from now, then you would still be ahead of the 2026 town meeting, and you would have that period of time until town meeting where anything goes. Would you have a special town meeting about this time of year, next year, to
Hey.
vote on whatever
I
people
will punt
came
that
up
one
with?
to the select board, because they
Yeah.
call, but if I may assume, but I don't want to break that word out for you, but I would assume that if we want to prevent somebody from coming in and taking advantage of no rules, if we can't have it ready for April, then we would request a special town meeting, but we'd have more time to develop it, be more comfortable with what we're recommending, have a better opportunity to present, our recommendation, if you will.
Right, I just
But
wanted
I
to
will pump that
clarify that.
question.
Yep, thanks.
But someone is anxious to answer that.
Yeah,
Or if you would, 'cause I
I'll
forgot
answer.
your name
Yeah,
already.
Joe Roy, Pinkham Brook Road. I'm the chair of the select board. Our understanding is that if the town enacts this moratorium, the select board has the authority after 6 months to extend it. But that there's some questions that we'd have to clear up with the lawyer, that if it needed to be extended after the 1 year mark, that there might be some challenges there, because they don't want it to be set, there's a legal process to set up, so you can't perpetually extend something for a moratorium for no reason. And so if the town were to pass this moratorium, I think that the goal for the planning board would be to have something ready within the first 6 months, ready for the town meeting, in April of '25. And then if that wasn't going to happen, and we had to extend it 6 more months, and we're not going to be able to make it until the 2026 town meeting, I can't speak for the future iteration of the board, but it is likely at that point a special town meeting would be the wisest option to make sure that the town has itself best protected and open to all viewpoints, and making sure it's integrating everyone's feedback and expertise. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Sir? Please restate your name.
Derek Lovich, 36 Snow Road. Just wanted to try and get the wording right, try and reiterate my, I want to say, I think it's a great idea to look into whether or not we can expand the 20 kilowatt standard to 40 seems pretty reasonable to me. 20 isn't that much. We built an all-electric house. Our estimate was 3 Tesla battery walls in order to power it for a week. That's not that much, and certainly not commercial scale. We chose not to do it at 15 grand a pop, but at the time. But it's too little, and it just seems sort of unfair to. I wouldn't be able to support anything with a standard that low.
Okay.
So hopefully we can look into changing it.
We will look into it, and we'll sort that out. Anybody else? Sir?
Joe Roy, just wanted to say once again, the whole point of this hearing is to get that great feedback, and so we'll connect, the select board and the town manager will connect with the lawyer first thing tomorrow to incorporate that feedback. I suspect there may be an opportunity to possibly do a motion at the moratorium to adjust the language like we do other articles at regular town meetings. But if there's an opportunity to explore these comments prior to that, we will do our best to incorporate that, because the intent is to just limit commercial grade or grid scale, and there's no intent to put restrictions on people's homes and home businesses. Correct. For this. So we'll definitely get on that first thing tomorrow. So.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Jason Queen, 118 Layton Road. So.
Could you, I'm sorry, repeat that into the mic?
Jason Queen, 118 Layton Road. So, in this document that's published, there's some allusion to consultant involvement. I was wondering if anybody has been consulted at this point in time, and
you do, has the planning board talked to an outside consultant? Is that correct?
Correct, or is that something that's gonna happen after the moratorium?
Well, it's hopefully after the moratorium, if we do it. Mr. Thabarge, we've had help from the chief and Juliet is quite fluent in this, so we've already done a lot of it, but if we need one, we will most definitely ask to have the funding to call up one, so.
Understood, just so it's explained to people, you know, there's, yes, I understand there's risk, but there's also huge benefits as well. It's gonna be posted. Grid stabilization and things of that nature.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's two, well, it's not just two sides, but there's pros and cons, and that's why we needed time to sort through all of that kind of stuff. So, and hence the moratorium.
Fair enough.
So thank you. Anybody else? Sir?
Cody Mayhew, 1031 Hallwell. I'm actually a part of the team that's building the battery storage in Gorham.
Oh, okay.
And the whole reason behind battery storage is to stabilize the grid. And so all of the renewable energy that's coming in from solar, and just let me finish, that's coming in from solar.
Quickly, if you would.
Yes. You're not generating any electricity when the sun goes away. So that's the point of the battery, stabilize the grid. If we kick this down the road 6 months to a year, you're potentially scaring away an essential resource to Durham, to all the local towns. So in order to stabilize the grid, which we all know we have power outages around here all the time, right? It's gonna get more attention from CMP now. It's gonna get more attention to all the substations. It's gonna stabilize the grid altogether. So if this moratorium comes in, I know we may not be ready as a town for it, but it's gonna come around here regardless.
Okay, I'd like to, you're more than welcome to make that point at the town meeting on why people should vote yes on the moratorium. And then we can talk about the next steps, if in fact it passes next week.
Okay, I guess, yeah, my point is
You support it.
the danger of the moratorium could put us in.
Okay. The belief is that we're in a greater danger if we don't have something to just go into this without the right tools, which is where we are right now, is, you know, you're right, there are probably pros to it. There are cons, and we want to make sure that we've looked through all of them and that we've done that provided the right standards and rules, so. Anyone else? Going, gone, okay. So the next steps will come after the vote next week, and we'll get further guidance from the select board on going forward. So I guess we need anybody else, because we need a motion to adjourn, if I may.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Anybody want to talk about adjourning? Seeing none, raise your hand if you want to go home. The meeting is ended. Please turn off your microphones. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight, and your comments were well received.
Yeah, we will definitely work for you guys. I think I remember.